My name is Jimmy Peterson, 62 years old, and I never thought my only son would try to send me away forever. After 25 years in the Navy and raising Matthew mostly alone since his mother died, I was shocked when I discovered the cruise ticket he gave me was one way only. I overheard him tell his wife they'd sell my house while I was stranded in Europe. The pain cut deep, but this old sailor still had a few tricks left. While I tell you how I turned the tables on my ungrateful son's scheme, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe. If you believe respect for parents never expires, they say you never really know someone until the money's involved, even your own flesh and blood. I suppose I should start at the beginning before everything went sideways with Matthew. I spent 25 years in the United States Navy as a submarine engineer. Not the glamorous kind of service you see in movies, but the kind where you're underneath the ocean for months, fixing things that break and making sure systems keep running so everyone can come home alive. I was good at my job. Received several commendations over my career and worked my way up to Senior Chief Petty Officer before retirement. I met Mary during shore leave in San Diego. She was a kindergarten teacher with the most beautiful smile and a laugh that could light up the darkest submarine bay. We got married 6 months later, and Matthew came along within the first year. Mary wanted more children, but there were complications during Matthew's birth, and the doctors advised against it. So Matthew became our world, our only child. Military life is tough on families. I was deployed for 6 to 9 months at a time, sometimes with little notice. Mary shouldered the burden of raising Matthew mostly alone during those years. When I was home, I tried to make up for lost time, but you can't cram months of fatherhood into a few weeks. Matthew and I never developed that easy rapport that some fathers and sons have. There was always a distance of formality between us that I couldn't quite bridge. As a teenager, Matthew grew increasingly resentful of my absences. He was a smart kid, gifted in mathematics and analytical thinking. But he was also angry. "You care more about your submarine buddies than us," he once shouted during a particularly heated argument when he was 15. Mary always stepped in, smoothed things over, reminded him of the sacrifices we all made as a military family. "Your father serves so others don't have to," she would tell him. "That's something to be proud of." After high school, Matthew attended Boston University on a partial scholarship studying finance. He gradually became more focused on his career and less openly hostile toward me, though the underlying tension remained. Mary took credit for this improvement. "I reminded him how your Navy salary and benefits paid for his education," she told me once. Sometimes young men need practical reminders of what love looks like. Matthew graduated with honors and landed a job at a prestigious financial firm in Boston. He met Amanda during his second year there. She was a driven real estate agent with designer tastes and ambitious plans. When he brought her home to meet us, I noticed how her eyes scanned our modest house, assessing its value rather than its comfort. But Matthew seemed happy, and that's what mattered to Mary and me. They married in a lavish ceremony that cost more than my annual Navy pension. I offered to contribute, but Matthew declined, saying they had it covered. Mary was already showing symptoms of what we later learned was stage 3 ovarian cancer, but she rallied for the wedding, determined to see our only child married before things got worse. Mary fought bravely for 2 years. I took early retirement to care for her, learning about medication side effects and palliative care. Matthew visited occasionally, always with the same uncomfortable expression, as if his mother's illness was an inconvenience rather than a tragedy. Amanda rarely came with him, always citing work commitments. When Mary passed 5 years ago, something in me broke. We'd been married for 32 years. She was my North Star, my reason for coming home from every deployment. Without her, our house felt empty, my days purposeless. I tried to fill the void by taking up woodworking in my garage, fishing at the local lake, and attending a grief support group at the VA, but nothing quite healed the Mary-sized hole in my life. Matthew and Amanda now had 2 children, Emma, a bright 7-year-old with Mary's smile, and Noah, a curious 5-year-old who loved building things. They lived in an upscale Boston suburb in a house that Matthew once mentioned had cost north of $1 million. I wasn't invited there often, perhaps once every few months for birthday celebrations or holidays, and always felt like an awkward guest rather than family. After a particularly lonely Thanksgiving alone, I decided to make more effort to be part of my grandchildren's lives. I began driving the 40 minutes to their neighborhood every other weekend, bringing small gifts for the kids and offering to babysit. Emma and Noah seemed genuinely happy to see me. I taught Emma how to play chess and helped Noah build elaborate structures with his blocks. Amanda's displeasure was palpable, though never directly expressed. She would find reasons to cut my visits short, mentioning appointments they were running late for, or suggesting the children needed naps. Once I overheard her telling a friend on the phone, "Matthew's father is here again. He just shows up with no warning. It's exhausting having to entertain him." I had actually texted Matthew 3 days before that visit, but chose not to correct her. Matthew himself was harder to read. When we were alone, he would sometimes ask about my Navy days or seek advice about household repairs. But when Amanda was present, he became more distant, more aligned with her subtle dismissals. "Dad, we've got a really busy schedule with the kids' activities," became his common refrain. "Maybe call before driving over next time." I reduced my visits, not wanting to be a burden. Instead, I focused on making my occasional time with Emma and Noah meaningful. I created a small workshop area in my garage where Noah could safely hammer and saw under supervision. For Emma, I set up a chess table in the living room where we would play for hours, her strategic mind surprising me with its sharpness. My financial situation was stable but not extravagant. I owned my house outright, a 3-bedroom ranch-style home in a middle-class neighborhood that Mary and I had purchased 30 years ago. My Navy pension covered my basic needs, and I had some savings, including a life insurance payout from Mary's policy. I lived frugally, partly from habit and partly because I had few material desires anymore. Matthew occasionally made comments about my house being too much for one person or suggesting I might enjoy a retirement community. I always changed the subject. This house held my memories of Mary, from the height markers for Matthew on the kitchen doorframe to the rose bushes she had lovingly tended in the backyard. I had no intention of leaving. I didn't realize then that Matthew and Amanda had already decided I should go whether I wanted to or not, and they had a plan that was as cruel as it was clever. It was a Tuesday morning in April when Matthew showed up unexpectedly at my door. He rarely visited me alone, so immediately I felt something was different. "Dad, I have a surprise for you," he announced as he walked in carrying a large envelope. His smile seemed genuine, his enthusiasm contagious. For a moment I saw the little boy who used to get excited about showing me his school projects during my brief returns from deployment. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where our family had shared thousands of meals over the decades. Matthew slid the envelope across to me with a flourish. "Go ahead, open it," he urged. Inside was a brochure for the Mediterranean Princess, a luxury cruise ship, along with what appeared to be booking confirmations and a detailed itinerary. I stared at the documents, confused. "I don't understand," I said. "It's a cruise, Dad. 3 months exploring the Atlantic and Mediterranean. Look at the ports of call: Lisbon, Barcelona, Nice, Rome, Athens, Istanbul. You're going to see all those places you used to tell me about when I was a kid. Remember how you always said you wanted to see the Mediterranean from above the water for a change?" I was stunned. The cruise looked incredibly luxurious, far beyond what I would ever book for myself. The suite pictured had a private balcony, king-size bed, and even a small sitting area. "Matthew, this is too much. I can't accept something this expensive." He waved away my concerns. "Amanda and I are doing well. This is our gift to you. You've been alone since Mom died, stuck in this house with your memories. It's time you got out, saw the world, maybe even met some new people." His tone turned solemn. "Mom would want you to start living again, Dad." Invoking Mary was a master stroke. I felt a tightening in my chest as I thought about what she would advise. Mary had always been adventurous, dragging me to local festivals and community events during my time at home, insisting that life was for living. "When does it leave?" I asked, still processing the magnitude of the gift. 3 weeks from now. That gives you plenty of time to prepare." Matthew's enthusiasm ramped up as he pulled out a notebook. "I've made a list of things you'll need. Passport is current, right? You'll need some resort wear, maybe a nice jacket for the captain's dinner. Oh, and don't worry about the house while you're gone. Amanda and I will check on it regularly, water the plants, that sort of thing." The thoroughness of his planning touched me. Maybe I had misjudged our relationship. Maybe the distance I felt was more my perception than reality. "This is incredibly generous, son. I don't know what to say." "Just say yes, Dad. Let us do this for you." His hand briefly covered mine on the table, a rare moment of physical connection between us. I agreed, of course. How could I not? It seemed like a genuine attempt to improve my quality of life, to help me move beyond grief. Over the next hour, Matthew helped me make a preliminary packing list, showed me photos of the ship's amenities, and explained the shore excursions already included in my package. Before leaving, he gave me an unexpected hug. "I'm really happy you're doing this, Dad. It's going to change everything." I didn't realize then how prophetic those words would be. For the next 2 days, I found myself genuinely excited about the trip. I dug out my old Navy duffel bag, then decided it wasn't appropriate for a luxury cruise and purchased a proper suitcase. I sorted through my clothes, setting aside items that might work and making a list of things I would need to buy. On the 3rd day after Matthew's visit, I realized I had forgotten to ask about internet access on the ship. Mary's old digital camera was still in good condition, and I wanted to know if I could email pictures of my adventures to Emma and Noah. I tried calling Matthew but got his voicemail, so I decided to drive over and ask in person, thinking I might also get a few minutes with my grandchildren. When I arrived at their house, Matthew's car was in the driveway but not Amanda's. Perfect timing, I thought. I could have a relaxed conversation with my son without feeling like I was imposing on Amanda's space. I approached the front door, but paused when I heard raised voices from inside. Through the partially open window of their living room, I could clearly hear Matthew and Amanda arguing. I wasn't one to eavesdrop ordinarily, but I heard my name mentioned and couldn't help lingering. "Jimmy will get suspicious when he realizes it's a one-way ticket," Amanda was saying, her voice sharp with irritation. Matthew's response was dismissive. "He won't figure it out until he's already on the ship and too far away to turn back. By then it won't matter." "And you're sure the cruise line won't tell him before he boards?" "I specifically told them it's a surprise extended vacation. The customer service rep thought it was a wonderful gift for a widowed father. They're not going to ruin the surprise." There was a pause, and I heard ice clinking in a glass. When Amanda spoke again, her voice had that satisfied tone I'd heard her use when closing a particularly profitable real estate deal. "It really is the perfect solution. Your father will be settled in Europe with just enough money to live on, but not enough to fly back. We can sell his house for a good profit in this market, and no one can call us bad children, because technically we gave him a luxury gift." "Exactly," Matthew agreed. "We're not abandoning him. We're giving him an exciting new chapter in a foreign country with financial support. He'll adjust." "And if he doesn't," Amanda asked, "what's he going to do?" "Come back with what money? We'll control his accounts as soon as he gives me power of attorney before the trip, which he will, because I'll tell him it's for emergencies while he's traveling." I stood frozen on the porch, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. My own son was planning to ship me off permanently to steal my home, to strand me thousands of miles away from everything and everyone I knew. The physical pain in my chest was immediate and intense. For a moment I feared I might be having a heart attack. I leaned against the wall of the house, trying to steady my breathing as the conversation continued inside. "What about the grandchildren?" Amanda asked. "They'll ask questions." "We'll tell them Grandpa Jimmy loved Europe so much he decided to stay. They're kids. They'll accept it and move on. Children are adaptable. And if your father somehow manages to contact them directly, he won't. I'll make sure his new phone only has my number, and I'll control his email access too. Trust me, I've thought of everything." The casual cruelty in my son's voice, the methodical way he planned to erase me from my own life and from my grandchildren's lives, felt like multiple stab wounds. Every word twisted the knife deeper. I had given 25 years to my country, often at the expense of my relationship with my son. I had tried to be a good father, despite the constraints of my naval career. I had supported Matthew through college, celebrated his successes, welcomed his wife into our family, despite her obvious disdain for our modest lifestyle. And this was how he repaid me, by discarding me like obsolete equipment too cumbersome to maintain, but potentially valuable for parts. I backed away from the door, silently grateful for the stealth skills I'd learned during naval operations. I made it to my car without being detected and sat there for several minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel. I thought about confronting them immediately, bursting through the door and demanding an explanation. But years of military training had taught me the value of strategic planning over emotional reactions. I needed time to think, to plan, to determine the best course of action. As I drove home, various emotions cycled through me: shock, disbelief, rage, heartbreak. But by the time I pulled into my driveway, a cold, clear determination had settled over me. If Matthew and Amanda wanted to play games, they would learn that this old sailor still had a few tactical maneuvers left. They had declared war without realizing their opponent had spent a lifetime preparing for battles. I would not go quietly. I would not be erased. And most importantly, I would make sure they understood exactly what they had tried to throw away. Back home, I spread the cruise documents across my kitchen table, examining them more carefully than I had during Matthew's presentation. Now that I knew what to look for, the signs were obvious. The outbound flight to Barcelona was clearly marked, but there was no return flight information. The cruise itself was labeled Barcelona to Naples, with detailed information about the final port disembarkation procedures, but nothing about a return journey. I checked the credit card information. The entire package had been paid in full using Matthew's corporate card. A generous gift indeed, if the intention had been for me to enjoy a vacation. But now I understood it was more like purchasing a one-way ticket to exile. My first instinct was to call Matthew directly and confront him, but I resisted the urge. Revealing my knowledge too soon would only give him time to develop countermeasures. Instead, I reached for my phone and called someone I knew I could trust implicitly. John Harrison and I had served together on 3 different submarines over a 15-year period. After retiring from the Navy, John had used his GI Bill to attend law school, specializing in elder law and estate planning. We had stayed in touch over the years, meeting monthly for beers and reminiscence. If anyone could help me navigate these treacherous waters, it was John. "Johnny, it's Jimmy," I said when he answered. "I need your help and it can't wait. Can you come over?" Something in my voice must have communicated the urgency because John didn't ask questions. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. True to his word, John's pickup truck pulled into my driveway exactly 30 minutes later. He was still the same barrel-chested man I'd known underwater, though his dark hair had turned completely silver, and he now wore wire-rimmed glasses that gave him a scholarly appearance at odds with his physical presence. I explained the situation as concisely as possible, showing him the cruise documents and recounting the conversation I'd overheard. John listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Jesus, Jimmy, I've seen some cold-blooded estate maneuvers in my practice, but this," he shook his head, "your own son." "Can they do this legally?" I asked. "Just ship me off and take my house." John's expression turned professionally focused. "Not without your cooperation, which they clearly expect to obtain through deception. The power of attorney is the key here. If you sign that, especially one without proper limitations, they could potentially sell your property, access your accounts, and make decisions that would be very difficult to reverse from overseas. So I just don't sign anything and confront them." John held up a hand. "Before you do anything rash, let's think strategically. You have an advantage right now they don't realize you have, which is knowledge of their plan. If you confront them directly, you lose that advantage." My military training kicked in, and I nodded in understanding. "So what do you suggest?" "First, we secure your assets. We update your will, immediately create a revocable trust for your property, and explicitly exclude Matthew from any decision-making capacity over your affairs. I can draft the paperwork today." "That seems harsh," I said, still struggling with the reality that my own son had betrayed me so completely. "Jimmy, he was planning to effectively exile you from your own country and steal your property. This isn't harsh, it's protective." John's voice softened. "Look, we can always amend these documents later if there's some explanation or reconciliation, but right now we need to protect you legally." Next, John suggested we document everything. "We need evidence of their intentions. Do you have any security cameras in your home?" I shook my head. Mary and I had never felt the need for such things in our quiet neighborhood. "We'll install some immediately hidden ones. If they're planning to come through your house while you're supposedly away, we'll have video evidence of any illegal activity or incriminating conversations." Over the next several hours, John and I formulated a plan. Rather than confronting Matthew and Amanda, I would appear to go along with their scheme, boarding the cruise ship as planned, but with a crucial modification: I wouldn't actually be on it. "We'll need help," John said. "Someone who can monitor the situation while staying completely under the radar." I thought immediately of Sarah Knudsen, the daughter of another Navy buddy. She had become a private investigator after college and had helped John with some of his trickier elder abuse cases. "I could call Bill's daughter Sarah." John nodded approvingly. "Perfect. Between the 3 of us, we can set up a counter-operation that your son and his wife won't see coming." The plan took shape over the next few days. John prepared new legal documents protecting my assets with explicit instructions that Matthew could not act as my proxy under any circumstances. I signed a new will leaving my house in a trust for Emma and Noah to be accessed only when they turned 25, with no possibility of their parents accessing the assets in the meantime. Sarah arrived with surveillance equipment that would make a CIA operative envious. She installed tiny cameras in my living room, kitchen, home office, and master bedroom, all connected to secure cloud storage that only she, John, and I could access. These are motion activated and will record both video and audio whenever someone enters the room, she explained as she tested the system on her laptop. The quality is excellent, and they're nearly impossible to spot unless you're specifically looking for them. With the legal and surveillance preparations in place, we moved to the next phase of the plan. I needed to convince Matthew and Amanda that I was completely unaware of their scheme and enthusiastically preparing for my vacation. I called Matthew the day after installing the cameras. "Son, I can't thank you enough for this cruise. I've been shopping for new clothes and luggage. Mary would be so excited for me." I deliberately mentioned his mother, knowing it would make him uncomfortable and less likely to question my enthusiasm. "That's great, Dad," he replied, and I could hear the relief in his voice. "Do you need any help with preparations?" "Actually, yes. I was wondering about power of attorney while I'm away. If something happens to the house or if there's an emergency, someone should be able to handle things legally." The eagerness in his response was almost comical. "I was going to suggest the same thing. I can bring the paperwork over tomorrow." "Perfect," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You're always thinking ahead, just like your mother." The next evening, Matthew arrived with a stack of legal documents which I pretended to review casually. Thanks to John's coaching, I knew exactly what to look for: the lack of time limitations on the power of attorney, the broad authorization to manage all financial affairs, and the specific inclusion of real estate transactions. "This looks pretty comprehensive," I commented mildly. "Do I really need to give you this much authority just for a 3-month trip?" Matthew had his answer ready. "It's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared, Dad. Remember how you always said that about submarine missions? This just covers all bases in case anything unexpected happens while you're away." I nodded thoughtfully, then reached for a pen. "Let me just make one small change," I said, adding the words, "valid until August 31st of this year only," above my signature, effectively limiting the power of attorney to the supposed duration of my trip. Matthew frowned slightly but recovered quickly. "Sure, that makes sense. We can always extend it if your trip runs longer." "Exactly," I agreed, suppressing a grim smile. Little did he know I had already signed John's properly drafted limited power of attorney document the day before, which had been officially notarized and filed. This document Matthew was so eager to obtain would be legally superseded without his knowledge. As the departure date approached, I maintained the charade, shopping for cruise-appropriate clothing, discussing excursions I was looking forward to, and generally acting like an excited traveler. I even asked Matthew and Amanda to bring the grandchildren over for a bon voyage dinner the week before my scheduled departure. During that dinner, I gave Emma and Noah special gifts to remember me by while I'm traveling. For Emma, a chess set that had belonged to my father. For Noah, a small toolbox with real but child-safe tools. I hugged them tightly, whispering that I loved them and would always be there for them. Amanda seemed impatient with these emotional moments, repeatedly checking her watch and mentioning the children's bedtime. Matthew appeared uncomfortable, but managed a convincing show of being happy for my adventure. As they were leaving, I purposely left a handwritten note half visible on my desk where I knew Matthew would see it. It was addressed to Emma and Noah, expressing how much I would miss them and how I hoped to be back for Noah's birthday in the fall. The confusion on Matthew's face was brief but noticeable. According to his plan, I wouldn't be returning at all. But he said nothing, simply hurrying his family out to the car with one last wave goodbye. Later that night, the security cameras caught Matthew returning alone. He went straight to my office and found the note, reading it with a frown before taking a photo with his phone. I could almost see the wheels turning as he tried to figure out if I suspected anything or if I was simply confused about the nature of the gift he'd given me. Everything was now in place. My legal affairs were secured. My home was under surveillance, and Matthew and Amanda still believed their plan was proceeding smoothly. In 3 days, I would supposedly board a plane to Barcelona, where the Mediterranean princess awaited to carry me into permanent exile. But I had a very different journey planned, one that would teach my son a lesson he would never forget. The morning of my supposed departure arrived bright and clear. I had packed my suitcase, as if actually going on the cruise, filling it with new clothes still bearing their tags. Matthew and Amanda arrived at 7:30 to drive me to the airport, both unusually cheerful. Emma and Noah came along still in their pajamas, sleepy-eyed, but excited to see Grandpa off on his big adventure. "Remember to send us postcards from all the countries, Grandpa," Emma said, hugging me tightly in the driveway. I want pictures of the big boats, Noah added, demonstrating his 5-year-old's understanding of cruise ships with widely spread arms. I promise, I told them, kneeling to their level, and I'll be back before you know it. I looked directly at Matthew as I said this, noting the slight tightening around his eyes. Sooner than anyone expects. The drive to the airport was filled with forced conversation. Amanda chatted enthusiastically about the Mediterranean climate, the cuisine I would enjoy, the historical sites at each port. Matthew focused on practical matters, reminding me about currency exchange rates and international phone plans. I've set everything up on your new phone, he explained, handing me the latest iPhone model. It's all paid for through my account. The international plan will let you call us from anywhere. What he didn't mention, but I already knew from my preparations with Sarah, was that the phone had been configured to limit my contacts and had tracking software installed. It would allow Matthew to monitor my location and communications while restricting my ability to contact anyone else directly. That's very thoughtful, I said, pocketing the phone without revealing I had my old phone securely hidden in my jacket, along with a second backup phone Sarah had provided, both with international SIM cards purchased anonymously. At the airport drop-off zone, I made a show of emotional farewells, hugging my grandchildren extra long and telling them to be good for their parents. I shook Matthew's hand formally, then pulled him into an unexpected embrace. I love you, son, I said quietly. I always have, even when I wasn't good at showing it. Something flickered across his face, something almost like guilt, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Have a great trip, Dad. It's exactly what you deserve. The double meaning wasn't lost on me. Amanda air-kissed my cheek. Enjoy every minute, Jimmy. Don't worry about anything back here. I'm sure you'll take care of everything, I thought bitterly, but outwardly I just smiled and nodded. As a final touch, I deliberately fumbled with my carry-on bag as I turned to go, allowing a sealed envelope to fall to the ground near Matthew's feet. Oh, can you get that, son? I asked, pretending not to notice what had fallen. Matthew picked up the envelope, glancing at it automatically. It was addressed to Emma and Noah in my distinctive handwriting with, "To be opened if Grandpa doesn't come back," written beneath. For a moment, real panic crossed Matthew's face. Did I know? Was this some kind of insurance policy or evidence? But I'd already taken my suitcase and was walking into the terminal, waving one last time to the children. Wait, Dad, you dropped this, Matthew called, hurrying after me with the envelope. I took it with an embarrassed smile. Silly me. Just a little something for the kids in case anything happens. You know how I worry. Navy training, always preparing for the worst-case scenario. Matthew's relief was palpable. You'll be fine, Dad. The cruise line has excellent medical facilities if you need them. I nodded, tucking the envelope into my jacket pocket where it would join my real phones after I was out of sight. The envelope actually contained nothing but blank pages, but it had served its purpose, planting a seed of doubt in Matthew's mind about how much I might know or suspect. Inside the terminal, I made my way to the security checkpoint where I knew Matthew could still observe me from the departure area windows. I entered the security line, gave one final wave toward the windows, then proceeded through as normal. Once past security and out of sight, I followed the plan Sarah had carefully laid out. Instead of proceeding to my designated gate for Barcelona, I headed to a completely different terminal where a flight to Chicago was boarding in 45 minutes. I had already checked in online for this flight using my legal name, but a different confirmation number than the one Matthew had provided. In Chicago, Sarah would be waiting to drive me to a small apartment she had rented under her name where I would base my counter operations for the next few weeks. The apartment was equipped with computers to monitor the security feeds from my house and had a secure internet connection that couldn't be traced back to me. As I settled into my seat on the Chicago-bound plane, I turned on the special phone Sarah had given me and sent a pre-arranged text message. Eagle has left the nest. Operation Boomerang is in effect. Within seconds, John replied, acknowledged, cameras active, legal documents secured. Sarah's response came moments later. All systems operational. Pickup arranged at OARD. I leaned back in my seat, feeling the plane begin to taxi. A flight attendant passing by noticed my expression and smiled. Excited about your trip to Chicago, sir? I nodded, returning her smile. Very much so. I'm going to visit some old friends. That's wonderful. Family is so important. Yes. I agreed, thinking of Emma and Noah and even of Matthew before greed and his wife's influence had poisoned him. Family is everything. That's why you have to fight for it sometimes. As the plane took off, I gazed out the window at my hometown, growing smaller below me. Matthew and Amanda believed I was heading east across the Atlantic, never to return. They had no idea I was actually flying west, setting in motion a plan that would bring me back stronger than ever. The Mediterranean Princess would indeed set sail tomorrow with my name on the passenger list. But thanks to Sarah's connections in the travel industry, a retiree with a similar physical description to mine would be enjoying that luxurious cabin, well compensated for periodically sending pre-written postcards and making occasional appearances for photos that could be shared on social media. Meanwhile, I would be watching Matthew and Amanda's every move, gathering evidence, and preparing for the moment when I would reclaim not just my home, but hopefully my son's conscience as well. From the apartment Sarah had arranged in Chicago, I established what felt like a command center for Operation Boomerang. 2 monitors displayed live feeds from the security cameras in my home, while a third connected to a secure email server where John would send regular legal updates. Sarah had thought of everything, even providing a burner phone for any necessary local calls. "The apartment is paid through next month," she explained after showing me around. "Internet is secure and untraceable. I've stocked the fridge and pantry with basics." "Sarah, I can't thank you enough. What do I owe you for all this?" She shook her head firmly. "Nothing. My dad told me how you pulled him out of that flooded compartment in '89, said he'd be dead if not for you. Consider this partial repayment for giving me a father." I remembered that incident vividly, a sudden pipe rupture during a deep water exercise. Bill Knudsen would have drowned if we hadn't gotten the hatch sealed in time. "Your father was a good man. He would have done the same for me." "Exactly. And that's why I'm helping you now." Sarah placed a folder on the kitchen table. "This contains everything you need to know about Matthew's finances. Turns out your son isn't quite as successful as he pretends to be." I flipped open the folder to find credit reports, mortgage statements, and investment summaries. The picture they painted was shocking. Matthew and Amanda were deeply in debt, leveraged to the maximum on their expensive home, with multiple maxed-out credit cards and a home equity line of credit that was nearly depleted. "They're underwater by nearly $400,000, Sarah explained. "Amanda's real estate business took a hit during the market slowdown last year, and Matthew made some poor investment choices trying to compensate. They've been keeping up appearances, but they're months away from potential bankruptcy." The pieces suddenly clicked into place. This wasn't just about getting rid of an inconvenient father figure. It was financial desperation. My house, modest as it was, had been paid off decades ago and was now worth close to $300,000 in the current market. My savings and Navy pension weren't substantial by their standards, but combined with the house equity, it would temporarily plug the hole in their financial boat. "They need my money," I said slowly, the realization both clarifying and deepening the betrayal. "This isn't just about not wanting me around. They're trying to save themselves from their own financial mistakes." Sarah nodded grimly. "From what I can tell, they're about 3 missed mortgage payments away from foreclosure proceedings. Your assets would buy them time." I sat heavily in the kitchen chair, the weight of this new information pressing down on me. My own son was willing to exile me permanently, not just because I was an inconvenience, but because he valued his lifestyle over my well-being. It was a mercenary calculation that left me breathless. What about my grandchildren, if their financial situation is this dire? "That's the other reason I wanted to help," Sarah said quietly. "Children shouldn't suffer for their parents' mistakes or choices. Whatever happens with Matthew and Amanda, Emma and Noah deserve protection." I nodded, my resolve strengthening. This wasn't just about teaching Matthew a lesson anymore. It was about ensuring my grandchildren's future security as well. Our surveillance operation began yielding results almost immediately. The day after my supposed departure, the security cameras captured Matthew entering my house alone. He spent nearly 2 hours going through my personal papers, taking photos of financial statements, and examining the deed to my house. The most damning moment came when he called Amanda from my living room, the camera capturing both sides of the conversation through the phone's speaker. "I'm at Dad's house now," Matthew said. "Everything looks good. I found his banking information and investment portfolio." "How much?" Amanda's voice was eager. "About $175 in savings and investments plus the house. We should be able to clear close to $500,000 total once we sell everything." "Perfect. That buys us at least a year to turn things around. Did you find the deed?" "Yes, and I've got the power of attorney. We can list the house next week. I already called Steve at Coldwell Banker. He can have a photographer here Monday." What about Jimmy's things? We'll need to clear the house for showing. Matthew glanced around my living room at the photos of our family, Mary's quilts draped over the sofa, my naval commendations on the wall. Most of it can go to donation. We'll keep a few family photos for the kids, but the rest is just old junk anyway. Old junk. My life with Mary, our memories, our home reduced to old junk that was inconveniently occupying space he wanted to sell. Over the next week, the cameras documented multiple visits from Matthew, sometimes with Amanda, as they inventoried my belongings, discussed which items had resale value, and planned the house listing. They brought boxes and began packing up smaller items, labeling some for storage and others for donation. During one particularly painful viewing session, I watched Amanda remove Mary's wedding portrait from the wall, examine it briefly, then add it to a donation pile with a dismissive, "No one wants these old-fashioned portraits. The frame might sell at a consignment shop." I must have made some sound of distress because Sarah, who was monitoring with me, placed a hand on my shoulder. "We've got everything we need, Jimmy. We can shut this down whenever you want." But I wasn't quite ready. I needed to understand the full extent of their betrayal to see how far they would go. And I needed to time my return for maximum impact. The opportunity came 2 weeks after my departure. The cameras showed Matthew and Amanda hosting a real estate agent for a preliminary walkthrough of my house. They had already removed many personal items and had begun staging the space with modern decorative elements borrowed from Amanda's office. "The market is hot right now," the agent was saying. "With some minor updates and proper staging, we could list at $325 and probably get multiple offers." Amanda beamed. "That's even better than we hoped. How quickly can we get it on the market?" "I could have the listing live by next weekend if you can have it fully staged by then. Will the owner be signing the paperwork as well?" The agent looked confused. "I understood this was your father's property." Matthew smoothly produced the power of attorney document. "My father has relocated permanently to Europe and has granted me full authority to handle his affairs, including the sale of his property." The agent examined the document with a slight frown. "This seems to have an expiration date," Matthew waved dismissively. "A technicality. Dad's not coming back. He's settled very happily in Italy and has asked us to liquidate his assets here to support his new lifestyle." The agent still seemed uncertain. "I'd feel more comfortable with a direct confirmation from the owner, perhaps a video call." "Of course," Matthew agreed readily. "I'll arrange that before we sign anything official." After the agent left, the cameras caught Matthew and Amanda in a tense discussion about how to handle this complication. "We need someone who can impersonate your father on a video call," Amanda suggested. "What about your cousin Tony?" "He's about the right age and the agent doesn't know what Jimmy looks like." Matthew shook his head. "Too risky. Tony can't keep a secret to save his life." He paced the living room thinking. "Maybe we say Dad's in a remote area with poor internet. We could get him to send a signed authorization and have it notarized locally. Can you forge his signature convincingly?" "I've been practicing." Matthew admitted a statement that sent a chill through me as I watched. They were now actively planning forgery and fraud, crossing the line from merely unethical behavior into clearly criminal activity. It was time to move to the next phase of our plan. I called John immediately. "They're planning to forge my signature on real estate documents. We need to act now." "I agree," John said. "I've already filed the restraining order based on the evidence we've collected. Sheriff can serve it tomorrow, and I've notified the relevant banks and investment firms about potential fraud attempts." The legal groundwork laid, I prepared for my return. But before confronting Matthew and Amanda directly, there was one vital stop I needed to make. It was time to see my grandchildren. 3 weeks to the day after my supposed one-way journey began, I stood outside Oakwood Elementary School waiting for the final bell. Sarah had confirmed Emma and Noah's daily schedule through discreet inquiries, allowing me to time my arrival perfectly. When the doors burst open and children streamed out, I spotted Emma immediately, her red backpack and blonde ponytail bouncing as she walked with a group of friends. Noah trailed slightly behind her, focused on a paper airplane he was attempting to launch. I waited until they had moved away from the densest part of the crowd before stepping into their line of sight. "Emma, Noah," I called softly. Both children froze, staring at me with wide eyes as if seeing a ghost. Then Noah broke into a run, launching himself into my arms with such force I nearly toppled over. "Grandpa?" "You came back early," he shouted, wrapping his small arms around my neck. Emma approached more cautiously, her 7-year-old mind processing the contradiction between what she had been told and what she was seeing. "Mommy said you were in Europe on a big boat and wouldn't be back for a really long time," she said, her expression troubled. I set Noah down and knelt to their level. "I was supposed to be on that boat, but I missed you both too much. I decided to come back early and surprise everyone." Emma's face brightened. "Daddy's going to be so surprised, he said we probably wouldn't see you until Christmas maybe." Christmas, 8 months away. So that was the timeline they had given the children. "Have Mommy and Daddy been to my house while I was gone?" I asked casually. Noah nodded enthusiastically. "Lots of times they're making it pretty for new people." "New people?" I prompted. "Mommy says a new family is going to live there and we have to make it nice," Emma explained. "They packed up all your things in boxes." "Mommy said you don't need them anymore because you're staying in Europe." The innocent delivery of these devastating words nearly broke my composure. I swallowed hard, maintaining a calm expression for the children's sake. "I see. Well, that's a big misunderstanding because I'm definitely not staying in Europe. This is my home." Before the conversation could continue, a familiar voice called from behind me. "Jimmy, is that really you?" I turned to find Margaret Collins, the school principal, and an old friend of Mary's staring at me in confusion. Margaret, just the person I was hoping to see. Margaret had been Mary's college roommate and had remained close to our family over the years. As principal of Oakwood Elementary, she had a special fondness for Emma and Noah. "The children have been telling everyone you moved to Europe permanently," she said, studying my face with concern. "Matthew and Amanda came in last week to update the emergency contact information, removing you entirely." My jaw tightened. That was premature and incorrect. In fact, Margaret, I could use your help with something important. In her office, with Emma and Noah happily occupied by the school counselor, I explained the situation in careful, measured terms. Margaret listened with increasing horror. "They tried to ship you off and sell your home without your knowledge. That's elder abuse, Jimmy." "It's being handled legally," I assured her, "but I'm concerned about the children. When I confront Matthew and Amanda, things might get messy. I want to make sure Emma and Noah aren't caught in the crossfire." Margaret's expression turned resolute. "You can count on me. Should we be prepared for custody concerns?" I hadn't considered that angle, but it was a valid point. If Matthew and Amanda were willing to discard me so callously, who knew what other ethical lines they might cross when cornered? I hope it won't come to that. But yes, it might be wise to be prepared. We discussed practical arrangements, including the possibility that the children might need temporary care during the initial confrontation. Margaret offered her home as a neutral location where Emma and Noah would feel safe and supported. With that contingency in place, I spent a few precious minutes with my grandchildren before they were picked up by their after-school sitter. I didn't reveal the full truth about what was happening, only that there had been a mix-up about my trip and that I would be seeing them again very soon. "Promise?" Emma asked, holding out her pinky finger. I linked my pinky with hers solemnly. "Promise. Grandpa's not going anywhere." As I watched them leave with their sitter, I felt both renewed determination and profound sadness. Matthew's betrayal had wounded me deeply, but seeing how casually he had lied to his own children about my disappearance from their lives revealed a callousness I hadn't fully grasped until now. The final piece of my counterplan fell into place the next day when John called to confirm the restraining order had been successfully filed and the relevant financial institutions had been notified of potential fraud. "The sheriff will serve the papers tomorrow," he informed me, "but there's something else you should know." I did some additional digging into Matthew and Amanda's finances based on what Sarah found. It's worse than we thought. They've been using company funds to cover personal expenses. Matthew could be facing embezzlement charges if his firm audits their accounts. This new information explained the desperation behind their scheme, but also raised the stakes significantly. My son wasn't just in financial trouble, he was potentially facing criminal charges. As angry as I was, I couldn't bear the thought of Emma and Noah visiting their father in prison. "Is there any way to address the financial issues without criminal charges?" I asked. John hesitated. "Possibly. If the funds were restored before any official investigation, and if his company chose not to press charges. But we're talking about a substantial amount, Jimmy. Where would he get that kind of money?" I thought about my savings, my pension, the equity in my home. All the things Matthew and Amanda had tried to steal from me might now be the only things that could save my son from prison. "Let me worry about that," I said finally. For now, let's focus on stopping the immediate threat to my property and establishing clear legal boundaries. The next morning, I received confirmation from Sarah that Matthew and Amanda were hosting an open house at my home. They had staged it, beautifully removed most personal items, and were expecting potential buyers throughout the day. It was the perfect moment for my return. The real estate open house at my home was in full swing when I arrived. Cars lined the street, and a large open house sign with Amanda's smiling professional photo stood in the front yard. I parked across the street and watched for a few minutes as prospective buyers entered and exited, some lingering to discuss features with Amanda, who stood elegantly attired on the front porch. Matthew was visible through the living room window, showing a middle-aged couple the renovated fireplace I had installed myself 10 years earlier. He was dressed in business casual attire, playing the role of helpful family member, facilitating the sale of an elderly relative's home. I straightened my tie, took a deep breath, and approached the house as if I were just another interested buyer. Amanda spotted me when I was halfway up the walkway, but from her angle and with my hat pulled low, she didn't immediately recognize me. "Welcome," and she called professionally. "Are you here for the open house?" "I am," I replied, climbing the steps to the porch where she stood. "I'm very interested in this property." "Wonderful. It's a lovely home with great bones, recently updated and in a family-friendly neighborhood. The current owner has maintained it beautifully for 30 years. I removed my hat and looked her directly in the eyes. "Yes, I know. I'm the current owner." The color drained from Amanda's face so rapidly I thought she might faint. Her professional smile froze in place while her eyes darted frantically toward the house interior, seeking Matthew. "Jimmy," she managed finally. "What a surprise. We thought you were—" "In Europe," I finished for her. "Permanently relocated with a one-way ticket. Yes, I'm sure you did." Before she could respond, a couple exited the front door, thanking her for the showing. Amanda's training kicked in, and she automatically handed them her business card, maintaining her professional facade despite her obvious shock. As soon as they were out of earshot, her demeanor changed completely. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "You're supposed to be on that cruise." "Funny thing about cruises," I said conversationally, though loud enough that nearby visitors turned curiously. "Most people expect to return from them eventually, unless someone deliberately books them a one-way ticket with no way home." Amanda's eyes widened in alarm at the implicit accusation and the attention it was drawing. "Let's not discuss family matters in public," she said, attempting to guide me away from the porch. "But this seems like the perfect place," I countered, gesturing to the house, "since you're so eager to sell my family home without my knowledge or consent." A heavy silence fell over the porch as nearby prospective buyers began to notice the tension. One woman actually took a step back, her expression uncomfortable. The front door opened and Matthew emerged, likely wondering about the sudden quiet. He froze mid-step when he saw me, his face a mask of disbelief. "Dad." "What? How are you here?" "I live here, son," I replied calmly. "The better question is why you're selling my house when I haven't put it on the market." The last remaining couple on the porch exchanged alarmed glances and quickly descended the stairs, followed by the others who had overheard. Within moments, the formerly bustling open house had emptied, leaving just the three of us on the porch. Matthew recovered first, shifting immediately to damage control. "Everyone misunderstood," he announced loudly to the retreating visitors. "Family miscommunication. The house isn't for sale after all." When they were gone, he turned back to me, his expression hardening. "You need to explain what's going on, Dad. You're supposed to be on that cruise ship halfway to Naples by now." "Yes, according to your plan. The one where you send me away permanently, sell my house, and tell my grandchildren they'll never see me again. That plan." Matthew blanched. "You heard us talking." "I heard everything," I confirmed, "including how you plan to use the power of attorney I supposedly signed to access my accounts and sell my property." Amanda recovered enough to attempt an explanation. "Jimmy, you're blowing this out of proportion. We were just trying to help you start fresh to enjoy your retirement in a beautiful European setting, with a one-way ticket and no way to return. By selling my house from under me, by lying to my grandchildren." I shook my head. "Save the real estate pitch, Amanda. I'm not buying." Matthew stepped forward, his face tense. "Dad, let's talk about this reasonably. The open house is clearly over. Come inside and we can discuss what's really going on." I followed them into my own home, noting the changes they had made in my brief absence. Most of my personal photos had been removed, replaced with generic artwork. Mary's quilts and my naval memorabilia were gone. The house had been staged to appeal to buyers stripped of any evidence of the life that had been lived within its walls. In the kitchen, which had been updated with new cabinet hardware and stylish accessories, Matthew turned to confront me. "How did you find out? And how did you get back here?" "I overheard you and Amanda discussing your plan the day you gave me the cruise ticket. I never boarded that ship. I've been watching and gathering evidence ever since." "Evidence of what exactly?" Amanda demanded, her lawyer's daughter instincts kicking in. Rather than answer directly, I removed my phone and pulled up the security camera app. I turned the screen toward them, showing the live feed of us standing in the kitchen from a camera hidden in the light fixture. "I've recorded everything. Every conversation about selling my house, accessing my accounts, forging my signature, even your discussions about telling Emma and Noah they wouldn't see me until Christmas, maybe." Matthew sank into a kitchen chair, the reality of his exposure hitting him all at once. Amanda remained standing, her legal mind clearly assessing the ramifications. "Those recordings wouldn't be admissible in court," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "You can't record people without their knowledge." "In this state, you can in your own home if you suspect criminal activity," I corrected her. "And even if that weren't the case, there's more than enough evidence to destroy your real estate career and Matthew's position at his firm. Not to mention what Emma and Noah would think when they're old enough to understand what you tried to do." The mention of the children seemed to pierce through Matthew's defensive shell. He looked up, his expression haunted. "The kids don't need to know about this." "No, they don't," I agreed. "But that depends entirely on what happens next." I placed a folder on the kitchen table, sliding it toward Matthew. "This contains documentation of your financial situation. The debt, the missed mortgage payments, the money taken from your company accounts. I know why you were so desperate for my assets, son." Matthew's face crumpled. For the first time since this confrontation began, I saw a glimpse of the boy I had raised, vulnerable and frightened beneath the polished exterior of the man he had become. "It all got away from us," he admitted quietly. "The house, the private schools, the country club membership. We were trying to give the kids everything to make sure they never felt the kind of financial uncertainty I did. Growing up when you were deployed and mom had to stretch every dollar. So your solution was to throw your father away." My voice broke slightly despite my efforts to remain calm. "To take the home your mother and I built, the only thing I have left of her, and sell it to cover your debts." Amanda interjected, her tone defensive. "It wasn't like that. We were going to send you money to live on. You would have been comfortable." "Comfortable but exiled, separated from my grandchildren and my home." I shook my head. "That's not a solution, Amanda. That's elder abuse." The front door opened and John entered, accompanied by a uniformed sheriff's deputy. Matthew and Amanda stared in alarm as they approached the kitchen. "Is everything okay, Jimmy?" John asked, eyeing Matthew and Amanda warily. I nodded. "Yes, we're having a family discussion about some poor decisions and how to move forward." The deputy stepped forward. "I have restraining orders to serve to Matthew and Amanda Johnson," he announced formally. "You are hereby ordered to cease all attempts to sell or transfer property belonging to James Peterson, to refrain from accessing his financial accounts, and to return any items removed from this residence." He handed the official documents to a stunned Matthew and Amanda, then turned to me. "Do you wish to press charges for attempted fraud and elder abuse, sir?" Matthew looked at me with genuine fear, understanding now the full legal jeopardy he faced. Amanda had gone completely pale, likely calculating the impact on her real estate license and reputation. I met my son's gaze steadily, seeing both the man he had become and the boy he had been. In his eyes I saw Mary, who had loved him unconditionally and would have been heartbroken to see what desperation had driven him to do. "No charges at this time," I said finally, "but I do have conditions." 1 year has passed since the confrontation that nearly tore our family apart. The changes in that time have been profound, some painful, others healing. After the restraining order was served, I offered Matthew and Amanda a choice: face potential criminal charges and financial ruin, or accept my alternative proposal. They chose the latter, though not without initial resistance. My proposal was simple but demanding. They would sell their expensive house to pay off their debts, surrender their country club membership and luxury vehicles, and move in with me. Matthew would seek counseling for his financial issues and family relationships. Amanda would work under supervision at her real estate firm until she rebuilt her professional reputation. Most importantly, They would participate in weekly family therapy sessions where we would honestly address the breach of trust and work toward healing. The transition was not easy. Amanda particularly struggled with the loss of status and the humiliation of having her professional colleagues learn about the aborted sale of my home. Matthew faced an internal audit at his firm when I insisted he come clean about the company funds he had misappropriated. He was demoted, but not fired, largely because I helped him repay the funds by taking a loan against my life insurance policy. The first few months living together were tense. We operated like awkward roommates, carefully navigating shared spaces, their resentment at their reduced circumstances occasionally flaring into passive-aggressive comments or cold silences. Emma and Noah, however, were delighted by the arrangement. Having their grandpa present every day was in their eyes a wonderful adventure. I taught Noah woodworking in my garage workshop, starting with simple birdhouses and gradually moving to more complex projects. Emma and I continued our chess matches, her strategic mind developing impressively for her age. The family therapy sessions, though initially uncomfortable, gradually became a forum for honest communication. Matthew finally expressed the abandonment he had felt during my long deployments, how he had built his adult life around providing the material security he felt he had lacked as a child. "I resented that Mom had to budget so carefully while you were away," he admitted during one particularly emotional session. "I swore my children would never know what it felt like to worry about money." "So you overcorrected," our therapist observed, "creating a lifestyle that eventually became unsustainable." "And when it started to collapse, I panicked," Matthew acknowledged. "I convinced myself that Dad's assets were the solution, that he'd be fine in Europe while we sorted ourselves out. I never allowed myself to see it as abandonment." Amanda's insights came more slowly. Her own childhood in a wealthy family had shaped her values around material success and appearances. The humbling of their financial circumstances forced her to reconsider what truly mattered. A breakthrough came one evening when she found me teaching Emma how to make Mary's special apple dumplings from scratch. The simple joy on her daughter's flour-covered face as she learned her grandmother's recipe seemed to touch something in Amanda. "I never had this growing up," she said quietly, watching from the doorway. "My mother was always at charity functions, and our cook didn't allow children in the kitchen. We had everything except moments like this." Gradually, a new pattern emerged in our household. We established chore rotations, family meal responsibilities, and budget planning sessions where everyone, even the children, had input appropriate to their age. Matthew discovered he had a talent for home repairs, taking pride in maintaining and improving our house rather than seeing it as a stepping stone to something more prestigious. 6 months into our arrangement, Amanda approached me with an unexpected proposal. "I've been researching housing for multi-generational families," she explained, showing me designs that would add a small apartment to the back of the house. "It would give you privacy while keeping you close to Emma and Noah. We could convert the garage and extend out about 15 feet. The suggestion revealed how far we had come. Instead of trying to remove me from their lives, they were now planning ways to better integrate our living situation for the long term. "That's a significant investment," I pointed out. "Where would the money come from?" "We've been saving," Matthew said, joining the conversation. "Living here has dramatically reduced our expenses, and both our salaries are recovering. We want to contribute to the household in a meaningful way, not just exist as guests in your home." The addition was completed 3 months ago, providing me with a comfortable private space while maintaining easy access to family activities. I have my own small kitchen and sitting area, but we still gather for dinner most nights in the main house, sharing stories and planning weekend activities. The most profound changes have been in our relationships. Matthew and I have developed a closeness that was missing throughout his childhood and early adulthood. We fish together on Sunday mornings, something he avoided when younger but now seems to genuinely enjoy. During these quiet hours on the lake, we've had conversations that have helped heal decades-old wounds. "I understand now why you were gone so much," he told me during a recent outing. "The sacrifice it took, how it tore you up inside. Mom always tried to explain it, but I couldn't hear it then. And I understand better how it felt from your perspective," I acknowledged. "The birthdays missed the school events I couldn't attend. I thought providing financially was enough, but a boy needs his father present." "Emma and Noah have that now," Matthew said, meeting my eyes. "They have both of us. That's something I never expected to value so much." Amanda has transformed perhaps the most dramatically. Her focus has shifted from status symbols to relationship building. She volunteers at the children's school, hosts simple but joyful neighborhood gatherings in our backyard, and has developed a specialty in helping seniors downsize and relocate, bringing compassion and understanding to a clientele she once would have dismissed as unprofitable. Most surprisingly, she and I have developed a genuine friendship based on mutual respect. She seeks my advice on her real estate clients, acknowledging that my engineering background gives me insights into property conditions that benefit her business. I value her organizational skills and fresh perspective on household matters. As for Emma and Noah, they have blossomed in our multi-generational home. Their academic performance has improved, and teachers comment on their increased confidence and emotional stability. They're learning values that money cannot buy: resourcefulness, responsibility, and respect for elders. The cruise ticket that was meant to exile me has become something of a family joke. For my birthday, last month, Matthew and Amanda presented me with a new cruise package, this one a 2-week family voyage to Alaska next summer, with round-trip airfare clearly marked on all 5 tickets. We thought it was time to create some better cruise memories, Matthew explained as the children bounced with excitement over the planned adventure. I look at my family now and marvel at how close we came to losing everything that truly matters. The scheme that was meant to discard me instead became the catalyst for rebuilding relationships that had been broken for decades. There are still difficult days, moments when old resentments surface, or when Amanda struggles with living more modestly than she once did. Matthew occasionally falls into workaholism, the instinct to provide abundantly not entirely extinguished. But we now have tools to recognize these patterns and address them honestly. What seemed like an ending has become a new beginning, proof that even the deepest betrayals can, with work and willingness, lead to healing and growth. My house is now truly a home again, filled with the kind of wealth that doesn't deplete with spending, love, forgiveness, and the precious gift of family. If you've found meaning in our story, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need to hear that reconciliation is possible, even after terrible mistakes. Has your family overcome a serious breach of trust? What helped you rebuild relationships that seemed broken beyond repair? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if our journey touched your heart, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Family relationships are always worth fighting for, even when especially when they've been damaged by poor choices. Thank you for joining me in this chapter of my life, and remember that sometimes the greatest comebacks begin with the deepest falls.